Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Open University.
Welcome, my dear students. Today we are going to learn about Introduction to C Programming. So it's our second lecture of Unit 1, right? So let's start with types of programming languages. Actually, in this lecture we are going to know about various programming languages, right? So on your screen you can see various programming languages like machine language, then assembly language, high level language, and there are some topics to be discussed like assembler, interpreter and compiler, right? So let's start. So actually programming languages can be classified into three categories as follows, as you can see. So machine language and assembly language and high level languages, and we will discuss about some of the programming language related concepts. Okay, as you can see on your screen, like assembler, interpreter and compiler. Okay, so machine language. Okay, so actually machine language is the language understood by a computer. Okay, so it's very difficult to understand, but it is the only thing that the computer can work with. So all programs and programming languages eventually generate or run programs in machine language, right? In machine language. So actually machine language is made up of instructions and data that are all binary numbers. So we can say machine language is a low level language made up of binary numbers or bits, so that a computer can understand. So actually it is also known as machine code or object code. The only language that the computer understands is machine language. So all programs and programming languages such as Swift and C++ produce or run programs in machine language before they are run on a computer. So when a specific task, even the smallest process executes, machine language is transported to the system processor. So computers are only able to understand binary data as they are digital devices, right? So similar to all electronic devices, computer is also designed by using integrated circuit, right? IC technology. So ICs are small chips made up of silicon kind of semiconductor materials, right? So few millions or even more transistors or capacitors kind of electronic components are fitted inside this IC chip. Usually these type of electronic components can have two states, charged or discharged. So depending upon the component is discharged or discharged, we assume 1 or 0. So this means computer can understand only one language, and that is the language of ones and zeros. We can have any type of data like numbers, string means text, images, videos or audios, but when it stores in the computer, it will be stored in the form of ones and zeros. So this language in which only two symbols 1 and 0 is allowed is called the native language of the machine or binary language. So this language is a low level language, and a machine can execute it very easy without any kind of translation. So the execution of the machine language is faster. But think how programmer can write all the programming instructions in terms of binary strings like 1010. Then it is difficult for the programmer to memorize all different instructions in the form different binary strings. Therefore learning machine language is difficult for the programmer. So let's discuss about advantages of machine language. So first of all, machine language is highly suited for small computers which have the limited memory. Second one is programs which are written in machine language are quite efficient because it takes shorter time for execution as compared to those programs which are written in another languages, right? Third one is no need of translation of the programs, because those programs which are written in machine language are directly understood by the computer, right? Then let's discuss some of the disadvantages of machine language. So the first one is machine language consists on zeros and ones, therefore all instructions written in the form of binary and we can say numerical numbers. Then second one is the numerical form of instructions is difficult to remember and leads to the errors. Then the third one is errors are difficult to find, so each statement has to be carefully checked. Then the fourth one is when an error is found, all of the statements below it have to be rewritten. Then next one is the modification in machine language program is a difficult task, because only modification in this language programs result in a series of changes. So if a program is to be modified by adding or deleting some instructions, then addresses of all the subsequent instructions are to be changed, right? And sixth one is the parts of previously written programs in machine language cannot be used in new program without changing the addresses of the instructions and data. So to conform with the new program, we can say. Now we are going to discuss about assembly language, right? Actually, assembly language is a programming language in which instead of memorizing binary strings for different types of instructions, programmer can use mnemonic instructions like add for addition, then sub for subtraction, then mul for multiplication, and so on. Because programmer can use mnemonic instruction in English, it's more convenient for the programmer. But how machine can understand add, sub and mul kind of mnemonic instructions, right? This is the question. So we know that machine can understand only binary language. Programmer here uses a translator called assembler after writing the program and before executing the program. So assembler is a software which reads all mnemonic instructions written by the programmer in the program and translates it into the strings of binaries, which will be executed by the CPU of the computer system. Now let's discuss in detail. Actually, assembly language is a low level programming language. It helps in understanding programming language to machine code. In computers, there is an assembler that helps in converting the assembly code into machine code executable. So actually assembly language is designed to understand the instruction and provide it to machine language for further processing. Now it mainly depends on the architecture of the system, whether it is the operating system or computer architecture. So assembly language mainly consists of mnemonic processor instructions or data and other statements or instructions. Now it is produced with the help of compiling the high level language source code like C, then C++. So the question arises over here is, why is assembly language useful, right? So the answer is, assembly language helps programmers to write human readable code that is almost similar to machine language. So machine language is difficult to understand and read, as it is just a series of numbers. So assembly language helps in providing full control of what tasks a computer is performing. Now another question comes in our mind is, why should we learn assembly language, right? So the learning of assembly language is still important for programmers because it helps in taking complete control over the system and its resources. So by learning assembly language, the programmer can write the code to access registers and retrieve the memory addresses of through pointers and values, right? Now it mainly helps in speed optimization that increases efficiency and performance. Assembly language learning helps in understanding the processor and memory functions. So if the programmer is writing any program that needs to be compiler, that means the programmer should have a complete understanding of the processor. Now assembly language helps in understanding the work of processors and memory. Actually it is cryptic and symbolic language. So assembly language helps in contacting the hardware directly. This language is mainly based on computer architecture and it recognizes a certain type of processor and it's different for different CPUs. So actually assembly language refers to transparency compared to other high level languages. So it has a small number of operations, but it is helpful in understanding algorithms and other flow of control. Actually it makes the code less complex and easy debugging as well. You can see here my mnemonic instruction will be converted into machine code with the help of assembler. So this is what the diagram explains. Okay, now we will discuss about some of the advantages and disadvantages of assembly language, right? So let's discuss some of the advantages and of assembly language first. So you can see simple execution. So the execution of the program is simple using assembly language because it makes the code human readable and at the time almost corresponds to the machine code. So actually it uses the assembler that scans the assembly program and maps its instructions to the equivalent machine code. Then generating the instructions for the machines is also there. Then you can even run complex jobs simply. Then the number of operations in this language is small, so making it a transparent language. Now the other benefit is that it makes debugging easier. This ultimately reduces the operational cost. Now the second one is runs faster. If you want to optimize the speed and get great performance, then assembly language can be your go-to. The programmers write codes in assembly language that are smaller yet still readable. Thus written programs run quicker and take less time to execute. The other reason for quick execution is the optimal use of resources. Then it utilizes only those resources that are required for the execution of the specific job. Compare these to its counterpart high level languages where more resources are used, affecting execution speed. Then the third one is better control on hardware. Now programmers use assembly language to control precisely what the computer does, right? So this programming language allows you to manipulate the hardware directly, right? Now the hence giving you better control, we can say. So you get the perk of directly accessing the hardware as the CPU understands this language. So with this it can be said assembly language is hardware oriented. Then the fourth one is memory efficient. Okay, so let's discuss about memory efficient. So when you write code in assembly language, the commands are understood directly by the processor of the system, right? So this allows the program to take less memory space. Also, most instructions in assembly language deal with registers, which are used to store the data. Actually, these registers allow you to retrieve data easily, which makes assembly language memory efficient, right? Then the next one is used in critical jobs. Actually, some jobs are critical and hence require high processing speed. Assembly language ensures that codes remain smaller, right, and faster to fulfill the needs of such situations. Additionally, this computer language allows the programmer to select best suited instructions for each situation, right? Now, let's discuss some of the disadvantages of assembly language. So, you might be wondering, if assembly language has these many benefits, why isn't it used widely, right? So the reason lies in the alternatives such as high level languages that are comparatively easy to use. Okay. So the first disadvantage is complexity. So we know high level languages are programmer friendly, so writing a simple code such as hello world is straightforward. Unfortunately, we cannot say the same for assembly language. In this case, codes are divided into 4 segments, and the segments are data, code, stack, and the extra segment. Now, programmers cannot simply write the codes without understanding the hardware they are working with. Okay, so they should know the internal structure of the microprocessors to begin with. So, actually, we have discussed earlier that assembly language gives more control over the hardware. So, however, this also means programmers need to write precise code to achieve the desired result. So, this is to say they need to define the complete program, including specifying the memory locations. Therefore, unless you are ready to take that extra step involved in the process, assembly language is not for you. In short, the complexity of this programming language may leave you baffled. So, second one is difficult syntax. In the programming world, syntax represents the rules based on which the language is structured, right? So, the easier the syntax, the easier it is to write code. Unfortunately, the syntax of the assembly language is complex, which makes the language difficult to learn. Also, the statements is assembly language include 4 fields like label, operation, operand, and comment. So, with keeping that in mind, code can get lengthy even for small operations. Furthermore, we can say running long programs in assembly language results in difficulties while executing and sometimes gives negative results. Then the third disadvantage is time consuming. After discussing complexity and difficult syntax, negative traits such as tedious and labor intensive come as no surprise, because alongside a lot of time you need to invest a lot of effort. You need to be meticulous about writing code in the assembly language. That's because the CPU makes the hardware do the job you want based on the instructions you provide, right? Also, not every hardware is compatible with high level languages. In such cases, you have no other option but to invest your time and learn the assembly language. Then the fourth one is lack of portability. Now, the major drawback of assembly language is its lack of portability. As mentioned above, we use an assembler to compile the code, right? So, each assembler has its assembly language. Consequently, programmers must design assembly language for specific computer architecture. Hence, this type of computer programming languages is not portable. Since the assembly language is not movable, you will have to rewrite the code if you want to run it on other machines. Then we can say even worse, you may have to write it from scratch. Then the next is high level language. So a HLL is a programming language such as C, Fortran or Pascal that enables a programmer to write programs that are more or less independent of a particular type of computer. Now, such languages are considered high level because they are closer to human languages and further from machine languages. Now, most high level languages are programmers friendly. So, programmer can write the instruction in English words, right? But high level languages use compiler or interpreter to convert the source code into we can say machine code, right? So before executing the program, we can say compilers also allow programmer to write an instruction which will be translated into several instructions in the low level language, right? So actually this reduces programming efforts and number of lines in the code. Then high level languages are actually easy to program. Then we can say it's easy to understand and more readable compared to assembly and binary languages. But high level language, we can say actually high level language is abbreviated as HLL. High level languages are similar to the human language. So unlike low level languages, high level languages are programmers friendly. So it's easy to code, debug and maintain. High level language provides higher level of abstraction from machine language. So they do not interact directly with the hardware. Rather, they focus more on the complex arithmetic operations. Then optimal program efficiency and easiness in coding, right? So low level programming uses machine friendly language. Then programmers write code either in binary or assembly language. Writing programs in binary is complex and cumbersome process. So here we are going to discuss about some of the advantages and disadvantages of high level language. So first one is easy to use and understand. Actually high level language uses English like words and they are closer to natural language, which makes easy to learn and understand. Actually the programmer need not to understand detailed computer architecture for writing programs using high level languages. Then the second one is machine independent. So the programs written in high level language are portable and hence program written using high level language can be executed on any type of computer with little or no modification at all. Then the third one is debugging is easy. So high level language makes easier to write and debug a program and gives the programmer time to think about overall logic rather than thinking about program code. Then actually because of the use of compilers and interpreters, errors can be detected and located easily, right? Then the fourth one is easy to maintain program. Now modification and maintenance of program written in high level language is easy compared to low level language. Now high level language has some of the disadvantages also. Okay, you can see on your screen. First one is poor control on the hardware. So since high level languages are away from hardware and programmer does not need to be aware of hardware, then accessing and controlling hardware directly is difficult. So second disadvantage of it is slow execution. Actually the program written in high level language need to be translated to machine language. So this translation process increases the execution time of program. Some of the concepts we will discuss related to programming languages are assembler, interpreter and compiler, right? So let's discuss about it. Actually these definitions are very important. Assembler, interpreter and compilers are all different types of translators which translate high level source code written by the programmer into machine language codes, right? So let's start with assembler. Actually, assembler is a kind of translator which translates mnemonic codes written in the assembly language into machine code. Okay. So assembler is a simple translator which translates one line of assembly code into one line of machine code. Because of assembler, programmers do not have to memorize binary strings for different instructions, and programmer can use English words like add, then subtraction, then multiplication, etc. Then next one is interpreter. Actually, an interpreter is a computer program that is used to directly execute program instructions written using one of the many high level programming languages, right, as you can see on your screen. Then third one is compiler. Okay, here a compiler is a computer program that translates computer code written in one programming language into another language. So the name compiler is primarily used for programs that translate source code from a high level programming language to a we can say a lower level language to create an executable program. So this is all about types of programming languages. I hope my students, you have enjoyed today's session. So here in these two video lectures we have completed our first unit of C programming.